It's interesting about the speaker next month. I was just reading on the internet today on a website called the BLACKTOWN Institute, how the church in Mosul has been absolutely devastated by ISIS. 83% of Christians have had to leave. I think it's only about 45 people left that are Christian in Mosul. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's going to be interesting next time if he's going to say something about Iran. So you want it a bit higher?
The volume.
He's going to turn the volume up on this.
Okay. You want it to get it closer to my mouth? I've already had my ice cream.
Let's hear it.
Hello?
That's wonderful. Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to give my testimony tonight, but it includes stuff about our business particularly. So I was brought up in a strongly evangelical Methodist church in South Australia. It's what they call a primitive Methodist. And it was a real privilege growing up with that group. One of the things that we didn't have in the church was even a cross. In the early days, it was completely different to what they were saying about Mosul with all of their statues and all that stuff. But we didn't even have a cross. But we love the Bible and we love the Lord. And we had some, besides my parents, we had some great Bible teachers. And they were formation part of my life. So I really praise God for that. And I was converted. We also had Christian Endeavour. You know Christian Endeavour? Yeah. So
you're saying Mosul got bombed because of the Christians?
No. Well, ISIS targeted Christians in Mosul.
So is Mosul a Christian town? Is it?
It was a very Christian town. Yes.
So that's in Syria?
No, in Iran.
Mosul?
In Iran.
In Iran?
Yes.
You're talking about Mosul in Iran?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's right.
Because there's a Mosul in Syria.
Is there? Sorry, maybe I got it wrong. But
well, the one in Syria is, they're called Muslim Alawites.
Right.
That's the sect.
There's
So I don't think ISIS got into Iran. You got that mixed up. Mosul's in Syria.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Syria, the leader of Syria, Al-Assad, he's from a sect. Well, he's not Sunni or Shia. He's Alawite.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no Mosul in.
We can look up the link when we're finished, and I'll give you that.
I don't think there's bombings in Iran going on.
Well, ISIS were after them, though.
Yeah, but ISIS is not in Iran. It's not even. It's unheard of. It's not even in the media or on YouTube. ISIS is in Mosul, and Mosul's in Syria. So you've got Iran and Syria mixed up.
Okay. Well, that will do. Anyway. I remember one thing that my father taught me very early on, amongst other things, was the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them to do to you. Of course, these days it's do them before they do you. That's the attitude of our society today. But do unto others as you would have them to do to you. He called that the golden rule, and the Bible actually talks about it as the golden rule. I think it's in Luke that does that. That's in Matthew and Luke. We had a great respect for the scriptural foundation and above the doctrines of the church. So being Methodist church, we had the Wesleyan way of looking at things, and that was fantastic. But there were some things that still, no church has it all right. So I remember talking with one of my friends till midnight a couple of nights. We were sitting in his car and we were yakking on about all kinds of things, including baptism. And our church had the Methodist Uniting Church has an attitude about infant baptism, of course, and but we were reading the Bible, God forbid, and we changed we had a big long discussion about that, me and my friend and some of the other people. Then, so we had midnight discussions, and it was like iron sharpens iron, as the book of Proverbs says. Anyway, I sensed a call of God to do missionary work, and I studied at MBI, Melbourne Bible Institute, and graduated from there in 1969. And then Kingswood College in Perth and University of Western Australia. And during this time, my attitude to the scriptures got me into trouble with the traditional Methodists over the baptism issue, but also with the progressives at Theological College. So it was very sad what happened in Theological College. Some of my best friends got gobbled up by what they were taught, and that was really sad. But the issue was the biblical standard versus tradition, or the biblical standard compared to what was popular in society. And so I actually became a Methodist minister and then a Uniting Church minister, and had a parish down in the south of Western Australia at Manjimup. And we had some people come to us who got converted. And they got talking to other people, and they said, well, perhaps we should get baptised. And I said, yeah, I agree with that. Anyway, we arranged for them to get baptised, but there was a complaint made. And and it's the complainants, you see, that get the noise. So yeah. Anyway, the church ended up giving me an ultimatum. They said that you leave quietly or you keep your opinions to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, being a minister, you're not paid to keep your opinion to yourself. You're paid to preach. You're paid to preach the gospel. You're paid to preach the truth, and that's not only getting paid. That's your call of God, and that's what you've got to walk with. Anyway, so we left quietly. So that was about 1979, I think, something like that. So then we had out of that we had a lot of choices to make. So we had some Pentecostal friends which we had communication with and fellowship with, and they were starting up a work here in New South Wales. So we came over to New South Wales and joined in with that. So, and we went to Bible school again and all that. So what do? No income, so we looked at opening a business, and so we bought into the ITP franchise untraded for the Blue Mountains. So we had all the area from basically Springwood right through to Blackheath that we bought into, and we started trading with that. It was a sub-franchise. So we wanted to start up our business, and there's choices you have to make about how you run your business. And being Christians, we wanted to make the right choices about morality and about how you run your business with in an honest and in a way that has a lot of integrity. So there's certain issues that come out of that. If you make a choice for what's right, those choices are going to be challenged. But then also there was things about how do you actually set up a business? What is the purpose of the business? Why are we in business? Are we in business to make money? Well, that's the usual thing, isn't it? That you're in business to make money. But that to us was secondary. To us, the most important thing was that the business was going to help us do what God wanted us to do. And the money was a secondary thing. Now, obviously, there was a challenge for that as you go on. So there was setting goals. We learned to ask God, and we had to manage our time. So setting the goals, the values of the business. Okay, we're not going out hell for leather to make money. We are going to run this business, to be a blessing to other people. So we learned to ask God, and then we had to manage our time that way as well.
Well, business makes money, but money makes you buy time, because time cannot be stopped.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
So you have to use.
If you make money, you can buy time. And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So there's some issues that came. The issue that came, and it was interesting how God led us through these issues. One of the first issues we had was about the building lease. We had this building in Katoomba, and it had these huge 8-foot long fluoro lights. I don't know whether you've ever seen anything like it. We'd never seen anything like it before. 8 foot long they were, three double lots of tubes. Anyway, we were there for about 18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years or something, and then Claude Neon came and said, you should be on contract for these. And we said, well, we paid the business lease, nothing was said about the lights. So they wanted us to join a contract. We thought, well, hang on, no. Anyway, they came about 2 or 3 times. We were thinking about, what do we do with this? Do we just roll over and start paying for the lights that we had no idea about? Anyway, they were old lights. So one of the guys, we were just talking to the guy one day and said, what's he going to do? What are you going to do with these lights? He said, if you don't pay us, we'll take them down. I said, oh yeah, what are you going to do with them? Take them to the dump? He said, yeah, probably. So anyway, we talked to him and I said, well, we'll do your deal. We'll take them down, we'll take them to the dump, we'll bring them back, put them up again. That's a good one. And we didn't see him after that. So that was one problem solved. Praise Jesus, that was good. Then there's the benefits of a strong ethos of integrity. There was one place that I was working for where I was doing the wages and preparing the weekly bankings and all that sort of thing on a regular basis. I think I was there half, 3/4 of a day a week or something like that, and some of the money started going missing. And the business owner started blaming me. I knew it wasn't me, but I couldn't do anything about it. All I could do was count the money that was there. And anyway, he accused me and sacked me. Anyway, I heard on the grapevine later on that after a week or a couple of months or something like that, that the money started going missing again. And I wasn't there. So anyway, they found out who was doing it. But what do? Do you jump up and down and demand reinstatement, or do you demand an apology? Or we decided that we would let it go, and maybe it was God's time for us to get out of there anyway. But I enjoyed the time there. They were Christian people, but I still didn't get an apology out of them. So there was a number of things that happened. People come, when you're an accountant, people come with all kinds of books, or not books, and so you've got to make your mind up about whether the people are telling you the truth, or trying to tell you the truth, or not trying to tell you the truth. And there was one guy, I remember, there was a rule about 1 ton ute, and he was gung-ho about getting this 4-wheel drive 1 ton ute, but I told him it had to be a 1 ton load carrying capacity ute. It's very difficult to do that, especially if it's a 4-wheel drive, especially if it's a diesel, and then especially if you trick it up. So what he did is he went and bought this thing, and he put tow bar on it, bull bar on it, and roll bar on it, and side steps on it, and all sort of thing. So it no longer carried a ton, but he still wanted the 1 ton concession. So he said, sorry, he can't do it. Man, he got angry. So what do? Roll over? No, I didn't. We went somewhere else. So then, see, it's tough doing it because you've got to face those sorts of things. Then another thing that happened too, we had a number of ethnic people come in, and a lot of the ethnic people are really into wheeling and dealing, you see. So they think they can wheel and deal with the tax office. Can't you do better than this? But God really saved us out of one of them. There was this business that was had inadequate bookwork, and we were just trying to do our best with it, and I prepared the books the best we can. Anyway, God saved us out of it, because before we lodged his tax return, he came in and said, "Can you give me a letter to the bank saying that I earn such and such and such and such and such and such?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." So I went back to his tax return, and I thought, "Oh, okay, there's a big discrepancy between what he's telling the tax office and telling the bank." So we altered his tax return to reflect what he was telling the bank, and I wrote the letter and gave him the letter, and also gave him the tax return. He got angry and walked out too. But once again, it was like God stepping in. If that guy had continued as our client, because that was the very first job that we did for him, if that guy had continued to be our client, it would have been snowballing. It would have been really a problem. Then we had staff that were stealing from us. That was dealt with. And another thing that happened often was that something would catch my eye about tax law or about some issue that we weren't taught about, and I would read up about it, and it would just catch my eye and get my attention, get my interest. And you know, within 1 or 2 weeks, someone would come into my office wanting to know about that. And it was like God was tutoring us. It was fantastic. God was setting me up to deal with the issues, otherwise I wouldn't have had a clue about what they were even talking about. And the same's happening now. The same happened just this week, in actual fact, because I'm teaching in Bible school now, and we're going through John's Gospel, and there was an issue that I wanted to do some research about the Feast of Tabernacles. And something just caught my eye. I thought, oh, I need to research that. And then blow me down this week on the radio, they have a session on it on the radio. and then I've got to write the answers to the lesson. And the stuff that I heard was like all primed up for me. It was fantastic. I didn't actually, and the timing of it was exquisite. You know, sometimes it's not what God does, it's when he does it. And how he does it is the miracle. Then one of the other things that we had, early on we had a licensee or a nominee tax agent, because I wasn't a tax agent in my own right in the early days. So we had to have someone come in and do all our licensing work. And one day he came in and he said to Rhonda, "I want you to double what you pay me." And I wasn't there, so Rhonda said, "Oh, I need to talk to Bruce about that." Anyway, she came home and told me, and I thought, oh, okay. And it just so happened that a month before, I think, I put into the tax office to have another tax agent also working with us. So I rang up the tax office, and they said, "How's that application going?" And they said, "Oh, he's just been approved." So this guy comes back in, and because it wasn't only that, his work was getting erratic, and you couldn't tell what he was going to do next. It was very unpredictable. So we wanted him out of our hair anyway. And because he was so erratic, we knew that if we did anything that even smelt wrong, he would really go for it. He would take us to court and all that sort of stuff. So so he came in about a week later, and he said, I want you to pay me double. And I said, no. He said, well, I'm leaving then. I said, okay. The day after he came back in and accused us of trading without a nominee, I said, no, we've got one. So and the perfect timing of God, you know, and the hand of God upon that was exquisite. It was just really good. It really got us out of a terrible situation. You could see it going downhill, and yeah, so that was good. There was issues with franchises, and God showed us a way through with that. There was issues with succession and retirement, and God showed us a way through that. You know, when we wanted to come and sell our business, we were thinking about selling our business, and one of our friends said to us, I think my friend would like to buy your business. So he got hold of him, we got a phone call from his friend, and yeah, he wanted to buy our business. It's like that, perfect timing. It was just really good. And yeah, I won't talk about the franchises because that's not very nice. Yeah, since you know who, it's good now. Anyway, but also there's the personal touch. You know, when you build up, when you're an accountant, you have opportunity to talk to people one-on-one, and they become your friends. You know, people trust you, and that's part of the business ethos. And we really tried to do that, to build a relationship with people. And then one of our clients was dying, and actually a number of them have died, and we've been invited to funerals and all that sort of stuff. But out of the blue, we got this phone call from his daughter. We didn't know that he was dying. Please, can you come round and he's in hospital and he's in a coma, can you come and visit him? So I went round and, you know, we spent some time with him, or I spent some time with him. I gave her a Bible and told her about the gospel. But then this guy was in a coma. So what do you do when you visit someone in a coma? Apparently they can hear. And I knew that you know, so I thought, okay, this guy can probably hear. So I preached the gospel to him. I told him about the thief on the cross. He was stuck on the cross, couldn't do anything, couldn't really make reparation to anybody, couldn't participate in baptism or any of the other sacraments, the table of the Lord. He couldn't really do anything except believe. That's all he could do. So I told this guy who was in a coma, I said, God will accept you. All you have to do is believe. You know, it's too late to do anything else. You can't do anything else. You can't, you know, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. You can't do anything like that. So I don't know whether he heard, but praise God, I hope he did. That God works these things out perfectly. I've found that so much the timing is right. So I pray God that the timing was right for him there. So did we do the right thing by taking on the business? Well, you've got to look back and you've got to say, okay, did we do the right thing? You know, there's the hoary chestnut that a lot of people and a lot of Christians get mixed up with these days. And it's the difference between conscience and doing the right thing. Now you can understand that doing what your conscience says should be the same as doing the right thing. It should be, but it's not necessarily so. Because what you think's right might not be right. And with our society these days, our society says you do whatever you think's right and you'll be okay. Because everybody has their own opinion about everything. So, and that's creeping into the church too, that whole idea. We ditch the foundations, and we ditch what we know, we ditch the history of the church, we ditch our historical understandings of Christianity. So Paul says that we should obey our conscience. He says in Romans 14:23, for whatever is not of faith is sin. And that passage is dealing with conscience. It's dealing with doing what you know or what you think is right. So if you think it's right, you should do it. Alright? Even if it's wrong. You get that? That's why it's a hoary chestnut. Even if it is wrong, if you think it's right to do, you should do it. But the issue is we should have our consciences trained by the word of God. And so that's why Rhonda and I have made it a point that we've got to go by the Word of God, not just by doing what we think is right. You should not violate your conscience, but you should make sure that your conscience is properly informed according to the truth. That's where people get it wrong. And so the power behind right choices. How do we get right choices? Well, there's two issues about right choices. I'm preaching now, right? the first is that there's a promise in Ezekiel. It talks about, I will give you a new heart. I'll give you a new heart and a new spirit. I'll take out the heart of stone and I'll give you a heart of flesh. So while we've got a stony heart, while we've got a human-informed heart, while we've got human-informed thoughts and values, then it's not going to be pleasing to God, even though we might think it's right. But God says He gives us a new heart and a new spirit. And we take on His heart and we take on His spirit. That's what He's going to give us. So how does that happen? Well, Jesus said, well, even before Jesus came, the angel said, you will call His name Jesus, for He will save His people from their sins. And Jesus means Jehovah is salvation. And to be saved from our sins, what does that mean? And unfortunately the church these days has reduced that message of being saved from our sins down to say a sinner's prayer and you'll be right. There's a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, including in our church, who limit the gospel to that. They go out on the street and all they want people to do is to say the sinner's prayer. And they think that they're saved. They're not. Who knows whether they're saved or not? That's part of it. But to be saved from our sins is not only to be saved from the penalty of our sins, but it's to be saved from the power of our sin. That's what's transformation. You can be saved from the penalty of sin and not have a new spirit and a new heart. But God says, I will give you a new heart and I'll give you a new spirit. And that's part of being saved. Being saved from the penalty of our sin, getting our ticket to heaven. We're not going to hell anymore. Jesus has died for us, praise God and all that, which is fantastic. You can't come to the end of explaining how good that is. But there's more. There's more than that. God comes along and He says, I want to give you a new heart. He comes along and He says, I want to save you from not only the penalty, but from the power of sin in our lives. In other words, to change the way that we're living. And then He says He wants to save us from the product or from the result of our sin. Now, obviously, if we've been like a smoker all our life or something like that, then apart from the stepping in power of God, which is still possible, then it's quite likely that we might die early, right? Because sin in our life has its product. But that's what God wants us to do. He wants to save us from the penalty and from the power and the result or the product of our sin. And what is sin? Sin is to miss the mark. It's to miss the mark. So when you're shooting at a target, how can you miss the target? Well, you can shoot at a target and not get as far as the target. That's one way to miss it. You can shoot at a target and shoot past it, shoot over the top of it, you still miss the target. Then you can shoot to the side and you'll still miss the target. And the enemy wants us to do any of those things apart from hitting the target, hitting the bullseye. But sometimes he wants to restrict us in our life so that we don't ever actually reach the goal. Sometimes we get enthusiastic and he says, okay, I can make him over-enthusiastic, so we go beyond what God wants us to do. We miss the target. And sometimes he wants us to divert us around, you see. So it's all part of being tied in with what I said in the very first place. We've got to be Bible people. We've got to be people who understand the heart of God. How do we understand the heart of God? How do we understand the heart of Jesus? How do we understand the Spirit of Jesus? Well, it's in the Scriptures. That's how we do it. And that's how we pick up his heart. I'll leave it there. If anyone wants to ask any questions or talk about it or have some prayer,
you were talking about the uniting church. We weren't too happy about people being baptized. Why was that? I can't understand why a church wouldn't be keen on something.
well, the reformers, Luther and then Wesley, didn't get quite as far as believers' baptism. Luther was about that far away from choosing believers' baptism. And Wesley, being an Anglican minister all his life, hung in with the Anglican thing about baptism, and if a person was baptised as a child, then it was regarded as rebaptism. He didn't require people to be baptised again as they were baptised before. Yeah. So what I wanted to do was if people got converted, had been baptised before, that we would baptise them. But in their mind and in my mind, they were saying what happened to me was not baptism. Right? Yeah. It's a bit hard because you talk about getting all the theology of rebaptism and stuff like that. Then it's a bit hard, and that's what people are really jumping up and down about. Rebaptism. Ah.
I see.
Yeah.
Rather than look at them as being new creations and that, whether they were baptised or not, or christened or dedicated.
Well, that's right. We would see. So what happens is then sometimes there would be a conflict between the person who come to Jesus and been reading their Bible and then wanted to be baptised, but their parents would say, "Oh no, you've been baptised. Therefore you can't be baptised again." Oh, but So then they would say there's often that older generation who had that understanding, who stood against that. Now, as it happened, there were some Catholic people in our church. People with Catholic background in our Methodist church where we were. And they were the ones that saw all colours of the rainbow when we suggested that. But I had other Methodist ministers come to me and said to me, "Bruce, we've been doing this for years." So it depends on whether you get reported, it depends on whether you get a complaint.
With baptism, you're talking about water baptism.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What about baptism in the Holy Spirit?
Well, the Methodists, they didn't preach that openly, but it was pretty clear that John Wesley had that on board as part of his understanding. Over 1,000 tongues to sing my great Redeemer's praise. So that was part of it. And if you read the history of the Methodist Church early on, there were people who were manifesting the gifts of the Spirit, without a doubt, including tongues. So that was on board, but it didn't become a doctrine so much. It was just something that was accepted.
So with a prayer that people make, you were commenting that it was a non-event, so to speak. But the Bible says that what comes out of your mouth comes from your heart.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that?
Oh, you mean when people...
When they make a confession of faith, when they speak it out, it comes from their heart.
Some people do that just to get rid of the evangelism.
Well, maybe so, but anyway, that's what the Bible says. It talks about what comes out of your mouth comes from your heart, and that's your heart is
Well,
where...
yes and no. There's stuff that comes out of your mouth that might not come from your heart. But it should. If you confess in Jesus, it should come out of your heart. But as you know, there's people say all sorts of things about Jesus that
Yeah, but sinner's prayer involves
that's
saying.
right, yes.
So anyway, I just thought I'd nail that down. Yeah.
And the other thing is follow up, of course, as well. That if they're just left there. I mean, God does wonderful things, and I'm sure that there are some people that are saved just with a sinner's prayer because the work of the Holy Spirit's been working in their life beforehand. It's what John Wesley calls prevenient grace. It brings them to that place where at the right time the evangelist comes along, preaches the gospel, and they receive. But then, if their life doesn't change, what is actually happening? There could be a number of faults, and this is the reason why we need to look at what I call the elephant in the room. Is if their life hasn't changed, they've made a confession for Jesus, and their life hasn't changed, it means that somehow they haven't understood, or that the church hasn't supported them to help them understand their new life. Or it might be that they're like the seed, not so much by the wayside, because the wayside seed didn't get sown, but the other seed, there's two other lots of seed got sown. It got sown amongst the rocks, was one of them, and the other one was sown with thorns, and they didn't bring forth fruit, so the way that they're supposed to. So, and yeah.
Can I say something?
Yep.
My mum and dad sent us to Sunday school to get good moral upbringing, and that was it. They didn't want any more than that, but that was okay. But I went to a Rays and Pages meeting, which was like Boys and Girls Club, and the Friday night before Billy Graham came and spoke at the Adelaide Royal Show grounds in 1959. Now, I went to this meeting on the Friday night and I heard the gospel for the first time. And what happened then was I was extremely shy, 14-year-old, and I was too shy to go out the front by myself, but I had determined, seeing I didn't go out the front then, to become a Christian. I determined that when Billy Graham gave the invitation at the end or towards the end of the meeting, no matter what happened, I was going forward to become a Christian. And that's what happened. But I hadn't heard the gospel, even though I went to Sunday school all those years, hadn't heard the gospel until that Friday night before Billy Graham came. And so that was really something that has meant a lot to me.
What happened after that?
What are you talking about?
What support did you get once you made that decision?
Oh, the lady who counselled me said that you need to read the Bible every day so you can get fed from the Word of God. You need to pray and to get involved in a church. So we were already involved in a church, and that was good.
See, now what Paul was explaining to us tonight, when he goes out on the street, if those people that get saved are taken out then and they're encouraged to go out on the street and preach the gospel themselves, that's part of the discipleship, because Jesus says go and make disciples. He just doesn't say go get people to say the sinner's prayer. That's not what he's asked us to do. He's asked us to go and make disciples. And so that's what Paul's doing. When he goes out, he preaches to them one day, and the next day hopefully they're out preaching the gospel themselves. They might not know much about it, but they know more than what they did the day before, and that's good. And yeah, so there's a lot of stuff there. When you actually think about Acts chapter 2, and when Peter got up and preached that wonderful sermon on the day of Pentecost, how did he end that up? He said the disciples gathered together and they held with the apostles' doctrine, fellowship and prayers. They were together. He didn't let them just go like that, because Satan wants to come in and take it away, and it's a thing. So we've got to make sure, as best we can, that we are cooperating, because it's a joint effort. Sometimes God really does come and save a person in spite of what we do, but most times God involves us with what He is doing, and that's part of the thing in the church, and we should not back off from that responsibility.
There's people that I know, they tiptoe through life hoping to make it safely to death. What advice should I give them?
Well, they need to be born again.
They need to be born again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And baptized?
Well, first of all, they need to believe. I mean, it's a bit like the Lord's Prayer, right?
Yes.
Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
art, our Father who art
in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Yes.
In one sense, we don't need to go any further. Because if we hallow God's name the way it should be, all the rest will follow. Right? And the rest will follow. So if they have the foundation right, then the rest will follow.
Okay.
So what is the foundation for salvation? The foundation for salvation is that we cannot save ourselves. All our righteousness is a filthy rags. Jesus is our righteousness. Our righteousness is a gift from Him. We cannot work it. We cannot work on it, you know. And so if the people are saying, "Well, I'm hoping that I'm going to be good enough to get to heaven in the long run," that's completely the wrong attitude.
Okay.
When I was a student preacher, student minister, and I was up in just north of Perth, and I've been there 18 months, 2 years or something like that. And I've been preaching the gospel and that sort of thing. And on the last day, the last Sunday, I preached my heart out as usual. And this little old lady comes up to me at the end of it. She says, "I hope I'm good enough to go to heaven." She hadn't got the message. I hope I'm good enough to go to heaven. I mean, none of us is good enough to go to heaven. None of us is good enough to even start going to heaven. And see, there's this whole issue about. See, it's while we were enemies, Christ died for us. It's not while we were neutral. We're not neutral. We're enemies of God. We can't be anything but enemies of God until He steps into our life. That's the power of it. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. There's a whole lot of things in the Christian faith that are what you might call dichotomies.